Hello, I'm Sarah, the Gallifreyan Ravenclaw. So I wanted to talk about what happened last night, which was Red Nose Day. I'm hoping to get this out tonight, so it should still be last night. So I know I follow a lot of YouTubers, and they've all been going on about the Doctor Who bit at the very beginning. So since this channel has been quite a lot of Doctor Who, I will obviously address that. So we knew because of the promo pics of David Tennant in the 14th Doctor's outfit that there was going to be something. But I know a lot of people afterwards were like, was that it? Because they'd been expecting a lot of different things. I wasn't actually expecting as much. Lots of people were going, oh, we're going to get this whole thing. And I'm like, I don't think we are. I think we're going to get a very short thing, which I was correct with. I said, will either be some very short pre-recorded thing, which was correct, or he'd just turn up in the 14th Doctor's outfit in between two clips or something, and all the presenters would mistake him for Tennant, and he'd be going, no, I'm the Doctor, and maybe drop some hint as to something, so it's like as if he's from halfway through episode 1 or something. So he'd drop some sort of hint of what he's been up to. But I know a lot of people were expecting an announcement of maybe a spin-off or something. So I get that people are disappointed like that. But my favourite thing was the ghost sketch. Obviously, if you looked at my channel, you see that there are ghosts videos on here. So you know that I watched it. And I probably, in a weird way, loved it a lot more than most Ghost fans. Simply because it did what I have been asking for ages. I've wanted for ages someone else to come to the house and have a whole, oh, you can see them as well scene. I've been wanting that for ages. I've been saying it obviously could be you have Sam from the US version come, or just anyone, and you just have a thing of the ghosts realising and then Alison realising, which they did it in that order, which I was very glad of. And so them both sort of ignoring it and then realising the other was doing the same. Obviously, as it was a shorter thing, it was quicker doing it than both seeing each other talking to them. If it had been a full episode, then I would have loved to have a scene of sort of one of the ghosts doing something really loudly, or even just the fact they were arguing, and then the two of them sort of clocking that they were both doing the same thing of pretending they couldn't hear them. But I get for a sketch, they obviously had to do it quickly, so them seeing each other talking to them was a good way to do that. But when I'd been imagining scenarios of this, the one thing I'd included was Pat being the one going, yes, they can see us too, to whichever one hadn't worked that out yet, or sort of having Alison turn to him for confirmation. And if you look carefully at that bit when she's going, you can see them too, Pat is nodding. None of the other ghosts have any expressions of sort of confirming or denying anything. They're just watching the show. But Pat is nodding. So I was very glad that he did do that, because I mean, that's a very Pat thing to do. He'd be the one going, yes. And there was one bit that, if you watch it a few times, as I already have, and it's not even been 24 hours, you notice after Kylie's explained why she can see ghosts and they're all going, oh yeah, we believe that, it's, if you listen, Lady B actually says, we've encountered that before. So if Kylie had heard that, then she might have figured out that they have met someone who could see them before by the fact that they weren't surprised, because presumably she'd been doing this at all locations. Like at the end she said she'd been speaking to a ghost at another location they checked out. So she clearly experienced with talking to ghosts, which was another thing I liked of sort of, we've never seen anyone meet these ghosts before, knowing what ghosts are and knowing all the stuff. Kylie clearly has already been learning that for years, and so it was just meeting another load of ghosts to her. But they obviously couldn't have had Kylie without referencing the fact in series 1 that Thomas was quoting one of her songs. So I love that they reference that of like Julian saying, oh, it's Kylie, and then him going, oh, that Kylie, and remembering her name. And Julian denying it was her because of her ageing. Not sure whether he was saying that can't be her because she hadn't aged enough, or the fact that he thought he didn't recognise her because she'd aged. I don't know. I think it could be inferred either way. I think based on what Pat was saying, it was probably more the latter, because she has aged extremely well. He might have been expecting her to look a lot older. And also the bit with Jason Donovan of Julian not even believing that was Jason Donovan, was you won't even believe both of them, and her nicknames for all of them, just going like Army Man and Caveman, and not even bothering to go like, okay, what are your names? Because she was like, I'm not going to learn them, I'm just chatting to you. Yeah, but Pat not knowing who she was and then not believing she could have possibly been on TV during his life proves that they didn't believe she'd aged that well, which kind of reminded me of that scene in the wedding episode when they're trying to identify the boy who turns out to be the one who shot Pat. They're going sort of, is it Dennis Waterman? No, he'd be older than that by now, sort of thing. Of proves sort of how out of touch they are of all these people that they'd heard of in their lives, certainly, obviously Pat and Julian, and sort of where they are now. So Julian needs to do more Googling, clearly. One of the other moments that I loved was the people with a pulse bit. I really hope they do use that again next time, I don't know, Mike's family come round or something. They make a point of saying sort of, leave us alone, and use that saying again, because that was actually quite a funny thing. If they've sort of got a whole system on what we do when other people turn up, saying, stay out of our way. Also, I don't know if you catch it first time, but Alison did say coming on again, which it's such an iconic line. I remember an interview with the actress saying that was her favourite line that she said. So I'm not surprised that that's made a reappearance. And then Kylie, within that one scene, figured the captain out, and yet he still didn't understand her, although he obviously clearly did. He pretended not to know what she's on about. And then her face when Julian said he used to have 4 Kylie calendars. She goes, 4? But my other favourite reaction was Mike walking in and sort of going, oh, this is nice. Alison's playing the piano for Kylie singing, and then turns to anger at, seriously, everyone else can see them. But then that bit with him and the manager, what was her name, Tess, was the best scene. It's like they just go, we need to hang out, because you think, obviously, Alison can talk to Mike about all the weirdness of the ghosts. He can't talk to her about the weirdness of having someone talking to people that you can't see. So he's got Tess for that now. I really hope they did exchange numbers, and I'd love to see her make a reappearance. Even just literally, she just turns up, or even Mike is missing a whole episode because he's gone to see her or something. Just that would be hilarious. Also, he does still think they're floating. If you saw his actions when he was talking to Tess, he sort of went and talking like that and went, yep, you still think they're floating. Even though Alison probably has told him by now that they're not. Also, Robin clearly still has lots to learn because he didn't understand anything about Australia. I think he's just said about 6 times what that mean. Because he learned all about the moon, but then that video led him on to conspiracy theory ones about the flat earth. So anyone teaching him about the globe would need to start with the earth is not flat. At least that would be slightly easier now, because I think Mary would have been the only other one who was agreeing with him that the earth was flat. I think everyone else is post-realising that it's round. And then the ending was hilarious. The last couple of lines of, they're so annoying that she'd rather the axe-wielding executioner than that lot of ghosts. Although I'd love to see the axe-wielding executioner at some point. I hope Mike and Alison go on a day trip to that castle. But there were a few sort of details in the sketch. So, firstly, I don't know if anyone else noticed the titles. Look what happened to Mary in the titles. I was kind of expecting her to not be in them, if I'd thought about it. But she is in them, but she, instead of just fading away again as it moves on. So I wonder if that's, I'm assuming that's for the next series. But is that then going to be used for every subsequent series, however many more there are? I don't think there'll be more than a couple more after that, but that's a different story. Or will they only be used for the next series, and the series after she just won't be in them full stop? That would be an interesting question. Also, one other detail, Lady B gave what her age would be if she was still alive. She said she was 168, which obviously clears up things. We have never been given a date of birth or death for her. I know there's been a lot of different suggestions. Most people were going sort of 1850s anyway, and that would make it 1855, provided it was set in 2023, which I think is safe to assume, as obviously it was being broadcast in 2023, and was probably only filmed in the last 3 months. I doubt it was filmed with Series 4. I'm assuming it was filmed early on in Series 5 and pushed through post-production earlier, because I believe they are still filming other bits for Series 5, but they would have just done it as an early on bit and made it top priority for post-production. So just on Lady B's age, so if she was born in 1855, Humphrey refers to her as a 60-year-old when he's watching her with his body. But she had a ticket for the Titanic, so therefore was still alive when that happened. So she must have still been alive in 1912. But her death date isn't known still. People have been saying that in the first ever episode, Mary said that you get used to the Screaming Woman after 100 years. So people are assuming she'd been there at least 100 years by that point, and obviously that was 2019. So that would make it 1919, 1918. At that point, if you take Mary literally, obviously it could have been 105, but I think it's safe to assume you wouldn't still refer to herself as Victorian or Edwardian if she'd lived that much past 1910. So she wouldn't be counted as Victorian and Edwardian if she'd lived that much past the reign of Edward VII, and he died in 1910. So I think it's safe to assume that she couldn't have lived that many more years later, otherwise she'd have also referred to herself as Georgian. But if she lived to 1912, then obviously she lived at least 2 years through. But I would go with she actually died by 1915. And the simple reason for that is World War I. Because we know her death was because her husband, she found her husband sleeping with the butler and the groundsman. But by the simple fact of they still had 2 male members of staff, I doubt it was like 1916, 1917. Because by then they'd have been signed up for the war, if they hadn't already gone. And lots of places like that didn't actually rehire staff, certainly immediately afterwards, simply because there was a lack of men. They had to wait a few years for there to be a few more men, who had still been boys at the time. So I don't believe that she actually can have died that much later than 1915. So that means we do now actually roughly have her age, and obviously 1915 would make her exactly 60. So with a bit of rounding on Humphrey's part, that does work. So I was just addressing that as it was obviously new information about her that is probably also said again in the next series, but we'll have to wait till the autumn for that. One more side note, if you've seen my previous video about ghosts' visibility, there was another example in this. When Kylie was phoning Jason Donovan, she did appear to be alone on screen, even though it was only her and the ghost looking, who obviously all could see ghosts. So they still weren't visible to themselves. It's exactly the same as it was with Alison and Barclay and Julian. Thanks for listening to this about mostly the ghosts sketch on Red Nose Day, but obviously there were the Doctor Who things as well. I'm not even going to mention the Dalek. Is it eligible to compete for the UK is my question, because they're not from the UK. Admittedly, they're the ones that said exterminate rather than extermineering, but that's a different story. So thanks for watching.